Maybe you clicked out of curiosity, or maybe, without even realizing it, you were looking for a quiet place where the words come slowly and the silence is part of the story. I wrote this with care, like stitching together memories, ache, and little truths, hoping that somewhere in here you might find a small piece of yourself. If that happens, even just for a moment, stay. Listen for as long as it feels right. And if you feel like it, leave a little sign, a comment, a heart, a quiet, "I'm here." Sometimes that's more than enough. I'm not really the sentimental type, but turning 65 felt different, not in a midlife crisis kind of way. I've already lived through enough of those. This was more about legacy, closure. I'd spent nearly 4 decades building Patterson and Company from a garage accounting firm into a respected financial consultancy with clients across the country. It started with me and a single IBM computer. Now, it was time to hand things over. So I planned a dinner. Just family, just us. I emailed the invites out 6 weeks in advance, called to confirm a few days before, ordered food from that Italian place Elliot used to love as a teenager. Even dug out the silver flatware that only sees the light of day when someone dies or gets married. This wasn't supposed to be a big thing, just a quiet celebration. And maybe, if the moment felt right, I'd tell Elliot I was stepping back and the company would be his. I set the table for 8. Me, Elliot, his wife Meadow, their 2 kids, my sister Janine and her husband, and 1 empty spot just in case my grandson's college roommate tagged along like last year. By 6:15 p.m., I started to worry I'd mixed up the dates. I double-checked the email, July 12th, 6 p.m. It was right there. I refreshed my phone. Nothing. By 6:45, I'd already lit the candles, uncorked the wine, and nervously rearranged the place cards 3 times. The lasagna was going cold. At 7 o'clock, I called Elliot, straight to voicemail. Then Meadow. Same thing. Then Janine. No answer. My house, normally warm, lived in, filled with the occasional chaos of grandkids and casserole dishes, felt like a museum. The kind where everything is perfectly preserved, but no one's been there in years. Just before I blew out the candles alone, I opened Instagram. I don't check it often, but Meadow posts the kids' photos there, and I like to pretend I'm still part of their everyday lives. Top of my feed, a boomerang of champagne glasses clinking on a yacht deck. Caption, Mediterranean magic. So grateful for this beautiful family getaway. I stared at it for a long time. In the background, I spotted my grandson Tommy, wrapped in a towel, laughing. My granddaughter Emma was playing cards with Meadow. My sister Janine, who'd told me she had a thing at the church, was wearing oversized sunglasses and sipping what looked like a very expensive cocktail. They weren't sick. They weren't busy. They weren't even in the country. They were all on a cruise, together, without me. And they hadn't said a word. At first, I thought maybe Meadow had booked it last minute, and it was just poor communication. But the photos kept coming. Group shots in Capri, wine tastings in Marseille, spa day selfies. The whole thing was planned, coordinated, down to the exact day, my birthday. Later that night, Elliot texted me, "Hey Mom, sorry." Meadow surprised us with a trip, totally last minute. "Happy birthday, love you heart." Last minute, my ass. I didn't reply. I just turned off the oven, wrapped the untouched cake in foil, and washed the damn dishes. Every clang of a plate sounded louder than it should have in a quiet house. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I also didn't sleep. Because something didn't sit right. This wasn't about a missed dinner. It was too precise, too clean, too deliberate. This wasn't them forgetting me. This was them pretending I didn't exist. The Monday after my non-birthday, I went into the office. I didn't need to. I hadn't been day-to-day at Patterson and Company for nearly 2 years. But I still had my corner office. Still had my name on the letterhead. still showed up for quarterly board meetings. Or so I thought. When I got to reception, the front desk girl, Haley, sweet but not exactly observant, gave me a tight smile. "Hi, Mrs. Patterson. I didn't realize you'd be in today." "Neither did I said. "Just needed to grab a few files." That was a lie. I wanted to feel like I still existed. I took the elevator to the top floor, half expecting someone to jump out with a "happy belated birthday" banner or something. Nothing. No flowers, no post-it notes on my door. Just silence. I sat down at my desk, opened my email, and started scrolling through unread messages. That's when I saw it. Subject line: Q3 Ownership Structure Draft. From legal@pattersonco.com. CC'd Elliot Meadow, our in-house counsel, and, curiously, not me. It was a thread going back 2 weeks. I clicked through. Legal language, charts, projected future transitions of control. One phrase stopped me cold. Primary succession pathway. Thomas C. Patterson, minor. Via legal proxy Meadow R. Patterson until age of majority. I stared at it for a full minute. Tommy, my grandson, 7 years old, listed as the future controller of the company I built from scratch. With Meadow, his mother, named as his legal proxy, and me, nowhere in the chain. Not even an advisory role. Not emeritus. Just omitted. I kept reading. Turns out, the family legacy plan had already been reviewed at the last board meeting. The board meeting I never received an invite for. The one that happened 3 days before my birthday. At first, I told myself it must be a clerical error, an oversight. Maybe my assistant had the wrong email on file. But then I opened my calendar. Nothing scheduled. Then I checked the board's Slack channel. I'd been removed. Quietly, without a word. That's when I remembered something. Emma's kindergarten recital. Meadow had said it was canceled last minute, but Janine later mentioned how cute Emma looked in her butterfly costume. Tommy's birthday party last fall. I was told it would be just the kids this year, but photos showed Meadow's side of the family, neighbors, even Elliot's college roommate. 1 or 2 times you think, bad timing. But this many times, it's not a mistake. It's strategy. I walked to the boardroom just to see if anything had changed. The nameplate on the wall, once Loretta Patterson, founder, had been replaced. Now it simply read, Patterson and Company Boardroom, Executive Access Only. I pulled out my phone and texted Elliot. "Hey, quick question. Was there a board meeting last week?" 10 minutes later, he replied, "Yeah, sorry, Mom. Things have been moving fast. We thought you were stepping back more officially. Meadow said you didn't want to be in the weeds anymore." There it was. Again. Meadow said, she always said things, said I was tired, said I needed rest, said I was more comfortable not being involved. I never said any of that, but no one ever asked me. I sat back in my chair and looked out at the skyline. This wasn't just about a birthday. They were phasing me out. Not just from family dinners or vacations, but from my own legacy. And Meadow? She wasn't just Elliot's wife. She was rewriting my history, piece by piece, and replacing me with a kid who still needed help tying his shoes. 3 days after I found out my name had been quietly erased from the company I built, someone knocked on my door. It was 9:20 in the morning. I hadn't changed out of my robe yet, coffee still half full on the kitchen table. I wasn't expecting anyone. Definitely not someone who rang the bell twice, with the kind of urgency that makes you think either someone died or someone's about to sue you. Through the peephole, I saw a man. Maybe mid-40s, dressed like he hadn't slept well in a week, creased blazer, tired eyes, lips pressed into something between determination and dread. I cracked the door, but kept the chain on. "Yes?" He cleared his throat. "Mrs. Patterson? Loretta Patterson?" I hesitated. "Who's asking?" "My name's David Chen," he said. I think my son might be living in your house." I blinked. "What?" "Your grandson. Tommy, I think he's my son. There are moments in life when everything freezes. No sound, no birds, no wind, just your heartbeat thudding against your ribs like it wants out. I opened the door, but only halfway. You need to explain yourself? Now. He nodded. I will, I promise. But this is not a short story. Then come in, I said, even though my instincts were screaming at me not to. He sat on the edge of the couch like a man who might bolt if I blinked too fast. Hands clenched together, knees bouncing. I was with Meadow, he started, before she was Meadow. I stared. Excuse me? Her real name, is Margaret Winters. We dated for about 2 years, lived together, talked about getting married. She got pregnant. I set my coffee down, carefully. She told me she wasn't ready for a baby, said she needed time. Then one day, I came home from work, and she was just gone. No note, no call, no forwarding address. She'd deleted her social accounts, even changed her number. You're saying she faked her own disappearance? I asked. I filed a missing person report, hired a PI. Nothing came up. It was like she vanished. That part, oddly, didn't surprise me. Meadow was the kind of woman who never left fingerprints, socially or otherwise. Even now, I wasn't sure if I knew her favorite color. So, what brought you here? He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. A little boy on a playground, maybe 7, dark hair, familiar tilt of the head. I saw her in Sacramento 3 months ago. Total accident. She was with a kid, a boy, and he looked exactly like me at that age. I followed them for a few blocks. I couldn't stop staring. I knew. I just knew. You're saying Tommy is your biological son? David nodded slowly. I hired another investigator. Got access to some public records. Pieced together enough to confirm she's now going by Meadow Patterson. Married your son Elliot not long after she vanished from my life. I did the math. She left me when she was 2 months pregnant. Tommy was born 7 months later. I wanted to scream, or throw something, or crawl out of my skin, but I just sat there. And this, he said, pulling out a sealed envelope, is a DNA report. I managed to get a sample from a barbershop she takes him to. The results came in last week. He handed it to me, and I opened it with shaking fingers. Probability of paternity, 99.7%. I read it twice. A third time, I wasn't just being cut out of birthdays and boardrooms. I was being cut out of a lie. A very big, very dangerous lie. David's voice softened. I'm not here to blow up your family. I don't want custody. I don't want money. I needed to know. And I thought, if anyone might care enough to do something before more damage is done, it would be you. My throat tightened. Elliot, my son, had married a woman who'd lied about her name, her past, and her child's parentage. And he had no idea. And Tommy? The sweet boy who used to beg me for chocolate milk and dinosaur puzzles? He wasn't my blood. But I'd held him as a baby, changed his diapers, cried at his first kindergarten play, taught him to fold napkins like a restaurant waiter. That kind of love didn't vanish just because the DNA didn't line up. I need some air, I whispered. David didn't move. Why now? I asked. Why tell me? He looked me straight in the eyes. Because I know what it feels like to be erased by her. And I think she's doing it to you too. After David left, I didn't sleep. Not because I doubted the DNA. That part was clear. But because the implications kept echoing in my head like a siren I couldn't turn off. What kind of woman fakes her identity, disappears from a man's life while pregnant, marries someone else, and never looks back? And how the hell had I missed all of it? The next morning, I called David. I want to know everything, I said. I figured you would, he replied. Meet me at the library. I don't trust email for this. That should have tipped me off. This wasn't just a paternity drama. This was bigger. David had brought a folder. Old school, manila, stuffed to the brim. Inside were screenshots, property records, DMV photos, and legal documents, all pointing to one uncomfortable truth. Meadow Patterson never existed before 2015. Her birth certificate said Margaret Elise Winters, born in Kansas, aged out of foster care at 18. No known family. Between 22 and 30, she'd moved between states. 2 marriages. Both ended in divorce. Both with some version of, she changed, became distant, took control of everything, then vanished. She married a real estate agent in Reno, David explained. Took a sizable alimony after convincing him to transfer a bunch of properties into both their names. He filed for fraud, but the prenup held. Then a second marriage, this time to a dentist in Oregon. She took over his books, restructured the office, slowly pushed out his longtime receptionist. His sister, by the way. Then left with a car, a joint account, and their client list. I assume he didn't press charges either. Nope, embarrassed. Said she was too smart for him. Sound familiar? It hit me like a wave. Meadow hadn't just landed in Elliot's life. She'd chosen him for his stability, his passivity, his connections. She didn't fall in love. She made an investment. I spent the afternoon retracing my own memories, recent ones, the ones that, up until this point, I'd shrugged off as bad luck or poor timing. Like how Elliot had slowly withdrawn from his friends. His college group used to do monthly poker nights. Haven't heard about one in 3 years? Or how he stopped attending conferences after Meadow said he should focus more on the kids. Or how he left his executive role at the firm to work from home. A move I supported at first, until I realized all his projects now went through Meadow. She wasn't just his wife. She was his gatekeeper, even to me. When I tried calling Elliot these days, Meadow usually picked up. Elliot's tied up with the kids. He's under a deadline. His migraines are acting up again. Last Thanksgiving, I offered to host. She said they'd already promised to spend it with her cousin. A cousin I now suspect doesn't exist. But the most chilling moment came when I remembered a passing comment from Janine, my sister. Meadow says you've been forgetting things lately. You okay? That was 3 months ago. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now? That felt strategic, planting a seed, just enough to create doubt, make people wonder, is Loretta slipping? Because once you frame someone as unreliable, anything they say afterward becomes suspect. And when that person is an older woman, it doesn't take much to get people to believe she's confused, emotional, maybe even unwell. It was gaslighting, subtle, polite, deadly. David leaned forward. I know what this looks like. I was in love with her too. I excused so much. She made Elliot believe I wanted to retire, I said quietly. He nodded. That's her playbook. Make the target believe the decision was their own. That way, when they look back, they feel like the manipulator is the one who supported them, not the one who pushed them. I felt sick, because she hadn't just targeted Elliot, she targeted me. And now Tommy, a child, was the tool she used to bind it all together. A boy she used as currency in a marriage built on fiction. Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the framed family photo we took last Christmas. The one I wasn't invited to. Everyone looked happy, whole. Except there was a gap, an empty space where I should have been. They didn't even notice I was missing. Because Meadow had made sure they didn't. But now I had pieces, names, dates, proof, and I was done being erased. I sent the invitation via text. Simple, polite, with just the right amount of warmth. Hi, Meadow. Hi, Elliot. I was thinking it might be nice to have a proper family dinner this weekend, just the 5 of us. We haven't really caught up in a while, and I'd love to talk about the future of the company. Maybe share a few updates. Saturday at 6, I'll cook. It was bait. I knew it, but I also knew Meadow well enough by now to make it look like I didn't know what I was doing. She replied, within 10 minutes. That sounds lovely. We've missed your cooking. I'll double-check with Elliot, but that should work. Of course she had to double-check. Like Elliot needed a hall pass to have dinner with his own mother. 2 hours later, I got the confirmation. Saturday, 6 p.m., just us. And they were walking straight into it. I spent the next few days prepping, not the food, though I did make Elliot's favorite roast chicken with rosemary and garlic mashed potatoes. No, I was preparing my case. David and I met twice in person. He offered to be there, in the background, if I needed him. We printed everything. The DNA test, Meadow's marriage certificates under her previous name, her name change records, and statements from both of her ex-husbands. Neatly sorted into a folder I planned to place on the table, like an extra side dish. By Saturday afternoon, my house smelled like sage and lemon zest. I set the table with the good china, the ones they didn't see last time. Candles, cloth napkins, wine already breathing. It looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. But underneath the polished surface was gunpowder. They arrived, right on time. Meadow looked like she always did before a performance. Composed, soft smile, cream blouse with delicate jewelry, and just the right shade of red lipstick to say, I'm wholesome but not boring. She brought wine, of course. Tommy ran to hug me. Grandma, we made paper lanterns at school today. Want to see mine? After dinner, sweetheart, I said, hugging him tightly. Emma followed more shyly. Meadow gently nudged her forward. Say hi to Grandma, Em. Hi, she murmured, eyes already drifting to the toys I kept in the living room for when they visited, which, lately, hadn't been often. Elliot looked tired, thinner than I remembered. His hugs weren't as strong anymore. That worried me more than I let on. Dinner started like any other. Light chatter, Meadow complimented the food. Elliot asked about the garden. Tommy nearly spilled his juice twice. Emma told me about a field trip to the zoo. The entire scene was curated, like a commercial for suburban stability. But I could see it now. The way Meadow subtly controlled the tempo of the night, redirecting conversations when they got too personal, finishing Elliot's sentences, helping the kids speak for themselves when they didn't need help. She was the producer, the scriptwriter. Everyone else was just reading lines. At one point, Tommy started telling a story. We were at the beach and I told Daddy that... Meadow interrupted. Sweetheart, remember? We agreed not to talk with our mouths full. It was gentle, warm, but it rewrote the moment. Like always. After dessert, my apple pie, made from scratch, I leaned back and said, I actually asked you here tonight for a reason. Meadow's smile flickered for half a second, just long enough for me to know she felt it coming. Oh? She said, tilting her head. About the company, I said smoothly. I've been thinking about long-term succession plans, estate matters, things like that. I thought you stepped back officially? Meadow said, sipping her wine. From operations, yes, I replied. But legally, structurally, I still have some say, at least for now. I stood and walked to the sideboard, retrieving the manila folder. Thick, heavy, silent. I laid it on the table, right between the wine glasses. There are a few things we need to clear up. Elliot frowned. What is this? Records, I said. Some legal, some medical, all relevant to the company and to this family. Meadow's entire posture changed. Not visibly, just tightly. Is this really necessary? She asked, voice light but tight. I met her eyes for the first time all night. Yes, because this time I wasn't going to let her speak for me or over me. This time I had the floor, and she had no idea what was coming next. The room went still. The only sounds were the faint ticking of the wall clock and the soft scrape of Meadow setting down her wineglass. Gently, like she was trying not to shatter the illusion she'd spent years perfecting. Elliot looked from me to the folder and back. "Mom, what's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch just enough to force everyone to stay in the discomfort. Then I opened the envelope. "I know this will be hard to hear," I said, sliding out the DNA results. "But it's time we all stop pretending." Elliot took the papers, read the heading. His brows pulled together as he scanned the numbers. "Probability of paternity, 99.7%. He read aloud. Then he blinked. "Wait, what?" "That's a paternity test," I said. "For Tommy." He stared at the page again, slower this time. "This says, I'm not—" "No," I said gently. "You're not his biological father." The words landed like a brick. Meadow's chair creaked as she shifted. "Loretta, this is—" "Don't!" I cut her off, calmly, firmly. "Not tonight." Elliot looked up, his voice cracking. "This has to be wrong. Meadow, tell her it's wrong." Meadow gave a breathy little laugh. "This is absurd. Where would she even get a test like that? She's obviously confused. Maybe she's been reading those Facebook conspiracy posts again." "Stop gaslighting him." It came out colder than I expected. I turned to Elliot. "Her real name isn't Meadow Patterson. It's Margaret Elise Winters, born in Kansas. She legally changed her name 2 years before she met you. She's been married twice, once in Nevada, once in Oregon. Both men were financially drained by the end. She left them just like she left the man who actually fathered Tommy." David's name didn't need to be said, yet the facts were enough. Meadow froze. Elliot's voice was quieter now. "Is this true?" She stood slowly. "Elliot, I don't know what your mother is trying to do, but none of this matters. You're Tommy's father. You've raised him. You love him." "That's not an answer," he said, rising to his feet too. "I'm asking if it's true." She hesitated. "It's complicated." "No," I said. "It's very simple. You got pregnant. You left the real father. You found someone stable and trusting. You built a lie and sold it as love." Meadow's face hardened. "You've always hated me." "No," I said. "I tried. God knows I tried, but you made sure I was always on the outside, always second-guessing myself. And you didn't just lie to me, you manipulated my son. You stole his trust, his identity, his future." Elliot stared at the floor, papers still clutched in his hand. "I thought Tommy came early," he murmured. "You told me the pregnancy was only 6.5 months. You said he was small, but the doctors weren't concerned." Meadow's voice turned sharp. "Because none of that matters. He is your son." "Is he?" Elliot's voice cracked. "Who are you, Meadow?" Or should I say, Margaret? It was the first time he said it, her real name, out loud, in front of all of us. She flinched like he'd slapped her. Everything was unraveling. Her calm facade, gone. The curated persona, the smooth language, the social media-ready version of motherhood. It all cracked. Elliot held up the paternity report. "How long were you going to lie to me? Forever? Were you ever planning to tell me?" Meadow's eyes darted to the kids in the next room. "Keep your voice down." "No," Elliot said louder now. "No more scripts, no more control, no more lies." He slammed the papers onto the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Everything has been a lie." Tommy's voice called out faintly from the living room. "Daddy, what's wrong?" That broke something in all of us. Meadow moved toward the hallway, but Elliot stepped in front of her. "Number not tonight." She looked at him like she didn't recognize the man standing there. Then she turned to me. "You think this makes you the hero? You think you've saved him?" "No," I said. "I think I've finally stopped you." Meadow's jaw clenched. You have no idea what you've started. I think I do. She grabbed her purse, her keys, and walked out the front door without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. Silence. Elliot didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, staring at the table, like his whole world had been set on fire, and he wasn't sure what was left to salvage. The silence after Meadow left wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that settles into walls, thick and heavy, as if the house itself wasn't sure what to do next. Elliot didn't move. He just stood in the dining room, hands still flat on the table, staring at the envelope like it might rewrite itself if he waited long enough. In the next room, Tommy peeked his head around the corner. Is Mommy mad? He asked. I got to him before Elliot did. No, sweetheart, I said, kneeling down. Mommy just needed some space. He frowned. Did Daddy yell at her? Sometimes grown-ups fight, I said carefully. Even people who love each other. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It wasn't a lie, exactly. Just a version of the truth he could carry at 7 years old. Emma clutched a toy in the corner, watching everything like a tiny ghost. She wasn't crying, but I knew that look, shut down, waiting for someone else to decide whether the world was safe again. Later that night, after the kids fell asleep on the couch watching an animated movie neither of them paid attention to, I found Elliot in the backyard. He was sitting on the porch steps, barefoot, holding a beer he hadn't touched. She really did it, he said quietly. She fooled me for 7 years. I sat beside him, didn't say anything right away. I feel like a stranger in my own life, he added, like none of it was real. It was real for you, I said. For Tommy, for Emma, that counts. He shook his head. What kind of idiot believes his kid just came early without ever questioning the math? Not an idiot, I said. Just someone who wanted to believe the best in someone they loved. He ran a hand through his hair. I gave her everything, every ounce of trust, every piece of myself, and she... His voice caught. She used a child to anchor the lie. A child. She used all of us, Elliot. He looked at me then, eyes raw. And I let her push you out. God, Mom, I let her make me think you were, controlling, tired, slipping? You weren't the only one she manipulated. But I should have known. I should have asked more questions. No, I said gently. You should forgive yourself. The next few days were hard. Meadow didn't call, didn't text. Her number still worked, but went unanswered. Tommy started asking harder questions. Why isn't Mommy coming home? Did she go on another trip? Did I do something bad? Each one chipped away at something inside me. Emma didn't say much at all, just held tight to my hand at bedtime like I might disappear too. Elliot took a leave of absence from the company. He needed time. I told him I'd hold things down at the firm for a few months. I didn't say, again, but we both knew. Some evenings, he would stand in the doorway of the kids' room long after they fell asleep. I caught him once, whispering to Tommy in the dark, I love you. That's never going to change. Okay? A week later, Tommy asked the question I had been dreading. Is Daddy still my real dad? I took a deep breath, sat down beside him on the floor. What do you think makes someone a real dad? He shrugged. Someone who plays soccer with you, picks you up from school, makes pancakes? Well, I said, then I'd say your dad is very real? But I look like Mr. David. You do, I admitted. And sometimes people have more than one person who helped bring them into the world. That doesn't mean they don't have a family. It just means their family might be bigger. He thought about that for a while. Can I still call both of them Dad? My throat tightened. Of course you can. And just like that, he nodded, satisfied. As if love to him wasn't a binary. It was a table that could seat more than one. That night, I stood in my kitchen folding laundry while the dishwasher hummed behind me. There was a toy dinosaur on the counter, a crayon drawing taped to the fridge, Emma's socks balled up in the wrong drawer. My house was messy, loud in a new way, but it wasn't empty anymore. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Built not from bloodlines or polished smiles, but from choice, from truth, from showing up even when everything falls apart. Maybe that's what family really is. 3 weeks after Meadow disappeared, the letter arrived. It wasn't a phone call. It wasn't an apology. It was emotion. Filed through her attorney, petition for full legal custody of Thomas C. Patterson, and, just for good measure, a claim to half of Elliot's business assets, citing marital contribution. The nerve of it, after everything. I sat across from Elliot at my kitchen table, the letter between us like a ticking bomb. Petition for full legal custody of Thomas C. Patterson. And, just for good measure, a claim to half of Elliot's business assets, citing marital contribution. The nerve of it. After everything. I sat across from Elliot at my kitchen table, the letter between us like a ticking bomb. She wants the company, he said quietly. She wants control, I corrected. Of you, of the narrative, of whatever leverage she can still wring out of the wreckage. Tommy and Emma were in the next room, building a Lego city that was somehow both chaotic and structurally sound. It struck me suddenly how much more mature their logic was than the woman trying to burn their lives down out of spite. She's not even Emma's biological mother, I said, and she's still claiming parental rights. Because the birth certificate says so, Elliot replied bitterly. She made me list her as mother when we filed it, and I didn't question it. That was Meadow's superpower. She didn't force. She guided. People followed because they thought it was their idea. But not this time. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. 2 weeks later, we stood in a small courtroom on the 5th floor of the county courthouse. Meadow sat on the other side of the room, perfectly styled in a navy blue suit and soft makeup. Playing the role again, this time the grieving, misunderstood mother fighting for her children. She didn't look at me once, but I looked at her, and I didn't blink. The judge, middle-aged, no nonsense, skimmed through the files, tapping his pen. Ms. Winters, he said, not bothering with Mrs. Patterson. You're petitioning for sole custody of a child who is not biologically yours, correct? I raised him, Meadow said smoothly, and I love him like my own. And you're requesting shared ownership of a business that predates your marriage by over a decade? I helped my husband manage several internal transitions. I've contributed to the growth. The judge nodded, then turned to our side. Ms. Patterson, your response? My attorney stood, but I placed my hand on her arm. I'd like to address the court myself. The judge raised an eyebrow. You may proceed. I stood, calm, controlled, hands folded. Your Honor, this woman, Margaret Elise Winters, has built her life around deception. I have here certified documentation of 2 previous marriages, both of which ended with financial damages and allegations of fraud. I have proof of name changes, identity misrepresentation, and the falsification of parental roles. I gestured to the binder on the table. The DNA test proves Tommy's biological father is not my son, and I now have proof from the hospital records that Emma was conceived through a donor program. Meadow was never the registered birth parent. There was a murmur in the room. Meadow's attorney looked panicked. Meadow stared forward, expression blank. But I wasn't finished. She has every right to love those children, but love is not ownership, and it certainly isn't manipulation. She's used their innocence, my son's trust, and our company's legacy as pawns in a personal game of gain and control. And then I said it. She tried to build an empire out of someone else's blood, But I intend to rebuild it with truth. The court ruled decisively. Meadows' petition was denied. Her claims to the business were dismissed. But we offered one deal. If she voluntarily relinquished parental claims and refrained from pursuing financial litigation, we would not press criminal charges for identity fraud or perjury. She signed. The next morning, she vanished. Again. Only this time, she left without taking anything. Later, Elliot asked me if I felt victorious. No, I said. But I feel like we finally stopped bleeding. 6 months. That's how long it took for the dust to settle, for the lawyers to close their files, for the kids to stop asking if Mommy was ever coming back. 6 months isn't long in the grand scheme of life. But for us, it was long enough to begin again. Elliot moved back into his old house, without the heaviness that once made it feel like a stage set. Gone were the curated picture frames and the furniture Meadow had picked to match her vibe. Now there were school art projects taped to the fridge, mismatched throw blankets on the couch, and Emma's dolls lined up like a jury on the stairs. David rented an apartment 10 minutes down the road. Close enough to share real parenting, far enough to give space when it was needed. At first, it was awkward. There were too many moving pieces, too many raw nerves. But something shifted the day Tommy came home from school, holding a handmade family tree project. He'd drawn both Elliot and David at the top, both labeled Dad. He looked up, totally unfazed, and said, "I wasn't sure what to do, so I put you both." Elliot and David glanced at each other across my kitchen. "I mean, can I do that?" Tommy asked. "Can I call both of you Dad?" They both paused. Then David smiled. "What do you want to do?" Tommy shrugged. "I want to." Elliot looked at David, then at me, then at his son. He nodded. "Then yeah, that works for us." And just like that, it was decided. No performance, no drama, just truth. Emma took longer. She was quieter, more reserved. Sometimes she'd wake up crying in the middle of the night, and I'd sit with her until she drifted off again. One evening, while I was brushing her hair before bed, she whispered, "Is it okay if I don't miss Mommy?" I set the brush down gently. "Of course it's okay." She looked at me with wide, tear-glossed eyes. I don't think she liked me that much. I swallowed the ache in my chest. "I think she didn't know how to love the way you need it." Emma leaned into me, small and steady. I didn't say more. I didn't have to. One Saturday, David knocked on my door holding a form and a nervous smile. "I've been thinking about something," he said, "and I talked to my lawyer." He handed me a sheet of paper. Request for name change, David Patterson Chen. "I'm not trying to replace anyone," he added quickly. "But I want Tommy to know that I'm here, that I'm in this, not just biologically, but completely. And, if it's okay, I'd like my name to reflect the family we've built." Elliot walked in just as I was reading the form. He looked at David, at me, at the kids playing behind us. "Honestly," Elliot said, smiling softly, "it's a good name." That evening, we sat around the dinner table. Roast chicken, crayons scattered across the tablecloth, laughter cutting through soft music from the speaker. Elliot told a story from his college days that made David spit water out of his nose. Emma fell asleep on my shoulder halfway through dessert, and Tommy, sticky-fingered and wide-eyed, declared it the best night ever. Not because it was perfect, but because no one was pretending. Monday morning, my inbox had exactly one unread message, flagged confidential. It was from my attorney. Subject, update, Margaret Elise Winters Loretta. Just a note to keep you in the loop. We've confirmed she filed for a legal name change again, this time in Seattle, under the name Clarice May Whitman. No other actions filed. No custody claims, no new lawsuits, just a new name. Again. I'll continue to monitor, per your request. I stared at the screen for a few seconds longer than I needed to. Not out of fear, not even anger, just a quiet sense of closure. She had run again, changed her name, her story, her skin. But this time, she left empty-handed. I walked down the hallway toward the living room. The late morning light warmed the floorboards, and somewhere in the kitchen, Emma was singing something off-key while Elliot tried to make pancakes without burning them. David was helping Tommy build a science project involving baking soda and vinegar. I paused in front of the photo wall. It wasn't a fancy gallery, just a modest collection of framed moments. Elliot pushing Emma on a tire swing. David and Tommy, covered in flour after a pizza night. The kids' messy drawings taped alongside client thank you notes from the firm. And one picture in the center, slightly bigger than the rest. We were all in it. David, Elliot, Emma, Tommy, and me. We were laughing, real, gut-deep, eyes-closed kind of laughing. No one was posed, no one was pretending, no one was missing. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't the woman left behind at an empty dinner table anymore. I wasn't the founder, quietly pushed out of her own legacy. I wasn't the grandmother watching her family from the outside. I was the one who stayed, who fought, who told the truth, even when it hurt. And I was still here, helping hold the thing together. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Tommy came running around the corner, barefoot and holding a piece of paper. "Grandma, look what we made." It was a hand-drawn family crest, messy, colorful, full of crooked hearts and 2 crowns labeled Dad and Dad number 2. "Do I get a title?" I asked, teasing. Tommy nodded. "Yep, you're the firekeeper." "The what?" "The one who keeps the family warm." I laughed, but my eyes welled. Then I guess I better never let the fire go out. I went back to my office that afternoon. The firm was still running, leaner now, more focused. Elliot had returned part-time, rebuilding slowly, deliberately. David was helping with outreach strategy of all things. Turns out he had a head for people when no one was manipulating him. And me? I wasn't chasing legacy anymore. I was protecting something better. Because in the end, it wasn't the name on the door or the stock portfolio that made a family last. It was the people who showed up, the people who stayed when things got ugly, the ones who fought for each other and then sat down and had dinner anyway. I used to think I'd been written out of the story. Turns out, I was just beginning to write the most important chapter.